One trafficker who is responsible for the presence of many of these children in Eluokrum is Musa Kwabena. He says he entices the parents of these children to gain custody of them with the promise of exciting returns.
Oh,
okay.
He has a network of traffickers in the northern part of Ghana, specifically Chereponi. They help him identify families with vulnerable children.
Okay.
Into Bibisa, no send ya oma. 200 Ghana cedi. Police for no. 200.
French me to go.
In case say akolaka ho and then obeka trom and I make 200 cedis na or de bema okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, like on say one thing country so one your mess you on say French, so I need to be honest in the week now on my
He told the investigative team he would charge 5,000 Ghana cedis to traffic at least 10 children for us. Our cover story was that we needed children to work on cocoa farms urgently. He revealed one of the approaches he adopts to outwit the security officers is to forge the national identity of these children.
25,000 and Colado does and I'll be to me diaba.
Okay, in Colanda, I said, yeah, look, say, also say, yeah, Mount Wisdom, say, be a met mania by 6, yeah, 7. Oh, but maybe we can, son, or more crown one, I say, Mutu, and I made a mechanical minimum Mutuka, but in Colana, what day, and the count.
These costs increase the number of years these children spent working on cocoa farms at Eluokrum. Rashida was trafficked from Chereponi by Musa. She was in class 6 at a basic school in Chereponi.
I have said you when I'm buying the first man and Papa when you go for me and 4 years.
Working long hours is not new to Rashida. She says she has served 4 years already under her old master. She was just 11. She is now serving for 1,000 Ghana cedis, which will be paid to her parents. There is no intention of her master sending her to school.
And that is the real situation. But did you know that across the world, almost 1 in 10 children is involved in child labor? Since the year 2000 till now, we've reduced that number by about 94 million, but we're still not making the right inroads. In recent years, we've been falling back, and Ghana is also on the map. Well, joining us for this all-important conversation we're about to have, Bright Apia, he's Executive Director, Child Rights International. We also have Ahmed Awal Kariama, Executive Director, Rural Initiatives for Self-Empowerment, that is RISE Ghana, as well as Kwesi Johnson, Executive Director, Friends of the Nation. Let me, gentlemen, let me just say a very good morning to all of you. Thank you for joining. If you can unmute so we can hear all of you. So just a quick sound check to ensure all of you are here with me. Bright, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Ahmed, good morning.
Yes, loud and clear. Good morning. Thank you.
Okay, and let's move on to Kwesi. Hello, Kwesi, can you hear me? All right, so Kwesi will join us shortly. Let me start with you, Bright. And we've heard from Fifi Boafo, Director of Public Affairs at COCOBOD, and he is saying that neither government nor their outfit is going to let this slide. They're going to take it up and they're going to go heavy on child labor. But the statistics I just read, this is not a phenomenon left to Ghana alone. It affects different countries across the world. Is our situation that dire, would you say?
Well, in Ghana, there have been a lot of effort in reducing child labor. In 2015, the child labor rate was almost around 48%. But based on the data that we've collected in 2021, which you will soon launch the report, the child labor situation is around 22% now. We are hoping that the various interventions that is going on under the sustainability program of the different partners that are buying cocoa from Ghana will see further reduction in child labor situation. So we are hoping that these interventions will provide some level of support in terms of the way and manner we have to deal with this particular issue. I personally feel that in dealing with this, we need to have a structure in handling some of these things because the issues of trafficking, if you look at the various indicators that comes out in terms of what you qualify to be trafficking issue is a bit deep and very complex. So the calculation of it is very, very important. And this is what stakeholders like Cocoa Board, the Ministry of Employment, and any other institution that is working in relation to dealing with child labor must have a full understanding of it so that when we are practicalizing it, we know that Ghana is taking certain steps to be able to do with that. I listened to Cocoa Board yesterday on some of the steps that they are taking, especially the arrest. But from my perspective as a social worker, we have worked in over 1,000 plus communities in the cocoa grain community, including Eliukrom. So I understand the dynamics that pertains there. And we have collected data in the over 1,000 communities. So there's a clear understanding of the situation that pertains in the cocoa sector. And then what partners are doing to also bring some of these things under control. And where it matters the most, if you need a police to be involved, we have to involve them. So I feel that the clear picture that needs to be painted by Cocoa Board wasn't so clear yesterday, only on the arrest. And arrest is just a minute part of the whole trafficking issue.
Because it's a chain, it's a long chain. And we know that traffickers are very, they are very calculated in their approach, in what they do. If you listened to some of what one of the traffickers said, it tells you that, for example, even targeting families that have vulnerable children, you see how calculated they are.
Exactly. So just to lay emphasis on arrest is not even enough to describe the effort that you've put in. But it's a supply chain activity. So you need to also have a clear understanding of how the dynamics are to be able to even do the arrest, because the arrest alone do not stop the perpetrators of this act. Because if you listen to the documentary, clearly at a certain point, they even involve the police to be able to execute the agenda. Right. So you cannot just say that I have caused arrest and that ends it. But the emphasis should be placed on a sustainability program that are going on and the effort that are being made to rescue some of these children and the things that the ministry and other cocoa buying companies are doing in these various communities. Then we'll have a clear and a full understanding of the situation and how to deal with it. But if we even want to lay emphasis on trafficking, you will know that those who are involved in this kind of act are not only targeting the cocoa sector, but it is a business for them. Once you want a child to be engaged in any kind of activity at all, they are available to provide it based on your specific needs. Right. So if you go there to tell them that you want a child to work in the cocoa farm, they are there to provide, not necessarily because they think that they are bringing the children to work in the cocoa farm. All that they are doing is that they are exchanging the child for any kind of work that they want to engage the child in. So that some of these must be clearly have a foundation for us to be able to understand it. But I can tell you that hopefully in 2 weeks' time, we will launch the Ghana Child Labor Monitoring and a remediation report. Then you have a clear understanding of this. But let me seriously commend Joy FM for this documentary. And for me, this documentary brings about a lot of issues that state institutions must take careful look at in terms of the approaches that they use in dealing with child labor in our agricultural sector, and then the solution that they have to profess in terms of how they deal with some of these issues and all that. Again, it sent a signal to the media to also have a full understanding of the things that happens in that area. So I'm so happy that you brought out this documentary. On the basis of this documentary, certain revelations and certain activities that are happening in the cocoa sector would also come to bear in terms of the effort that we are putting into address this particular issue.
Well, Bright, this is what we do socially. This is what we stand for. And it's also a feather in the cap of my colleague Kwete Nate, West African Journalist of the Year. This is what we do. Ahmed, let me come to you now. And so some of the figures are very disturbing. When you look at the details from the United Nations, they talk about the fact that Africa is at the very top when it comes to child labor activities, trafficking and all of that, both in percentage and in actual numbers. We are looking at about 72 million in Africa, and this is 2021 data. And we are looking at about, a fifth of the total numbers across the world. In the rural areas that you visit, have you had any scrapes with child labor? What form, and why do you feel Africa is at the very top and Ghana is inclusive in terms of this? What are the experiences you can share, and why do you feel we are not making the sort of inroads we would have wanted?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss this important matter. And let me use the opportunity to say good morning to your viewers as well as listeners. There are several forms of child labor issues that we come across in the respective communities that we visit. Unfortunately, the matter, like Bright indicated, takes many different forms and it's complex. So that is why some of us believe that we need to put it with a context-specific understanding and analysis to better respond effectively to the specific situations. There are instances where, like the Chokosi concept, people are actually giving out work to pay off the debt of their parents. So it's also a form of trafficking of children, in that the child is innocent, the parents owe some money, and they are asked to release their children to go and do work to pay for that. And you took the wind out of my sail when you mentioned the fact that it's a value chain thing. So we need to look at it as a value chain approach. And with the value chain approach, we look at the various actors, what are their motivations, what drives them. For instance, one of the key aspects is beyond this arrest, the enforcement and the ecosystem of the law that protects the child. We have our child protection policies beautiful in the place. We have child panels that are supposed to be functional at the district assembly level. Most of these things are not functional. And then there are issues of conflict and vulnerabilities in terms of economic aspect. People's livelihoods in terms of productivity at the agricultural level. That's the mainstay of most rural folk. So when the agricultural systems are not working well, they're not getting the feedback and the results from the agriculture they are engaged in, then chances are that they want to even prioritize what do we do with our children. So the moment somebody comes into the picture and exploit this vulnerability, then you see that the parents are willing to release the children. We have seen where children are involved in not just the cocoa sector, but mining and other dangerous and hazardous work. So child labor comes in many forms and depending on the context of the communities. And I must say that when you look at the Kulgungu area, the distance between Kulgungu and the Sefuye, where we are talking about this, is over a 700-kilometer distance. And Kulgungu is a border town. So there are chances that some of these children are actually migrant children who are kidnapped from across the country and brought into the country. When you go to places like Boko, you find children from neighboring Burkina Faso and Togo who have ostensibly come to study, and some of these children have been used to commit crimes. Some of these children have been used to pick intelligence in terms of armed robbery and others. So it goes beyond the child labor and the risk of it. And if we don't look at it clearly, it's a panacea for disrupting our security system, because these children are innocent children and they can be misled. There are instances where thieves have used children to spy on people. Thieves have used children to burn houses and other properties of people. So the situation is complex, and we need to look at it as a value chain approach. Also, the other thing we are proposing is that the private sector, for instance, and the Ghana Cocoa Board should look at a form of league table. We have a district league table that assesses the development standards of the district. Can we have ethical standards table for all the actors in the cocoa sector, so that we don't have to make this an international affair? The Ghana Cocoa Board should be able to put in measures to ensure that all the actors are holding strongly some ethical practices and ensuring that I will not buy cocoa from you once you are engaged in any practice of child labor. And then also, we must not rush to arrest these people and then before breaking the cell. The gentleman who operates and says that he can supply so many children, he has other collaborators. Then if we rush already and we announce that they have been arrested, then these people are likely to coil back, and then we're not able to trace, and without accurate diagnosis of the problem, it will linger again, only die off for a period of time, and it will come back again. And then also,
is that to say, Ahmed, very quickly, that the stance of Cocoa Board right now leaves a lot to be desired? I mean, yes, arresting, but do you agree then with what Brighter Pia is saying, that we need to put in place a lot more measures to curb this practice?
Yes, because clearly so. Beyond arrests, if you arrest people, the medical practitioners will tell you that accurate diagnosis is half the cure. If you arrest the perpetrator, that's just one perpetrator. He operates with a lot of people and other people. How do we even address the vulnerability of the parents that exposes the children to this situation? Parents are supplying children because they feel that that is the best interest of the child. Unfortunately, it is not. So that's why we have innovative programs from NGOs like Grameen, where they are working in cocoa communities to promote financial inclusion. When you do this and you provide parents like a Momo, a parent becomes a Momo agent, a community volunteer becomes a Momo agent, then they are able to intercept information about child trafficking. They are able to campaign against it. One, a lot of people are not aware of the penal measures, the penal code associated with child trafficking and human trafficking. We need to let more people to get to know this. So the Cocoa Board should have an expanded program beyond just arrests, so that they would look at who are the actors in the various value chain. The police was complicit in this matter, they mentioned. Other actors are there, the parents, the demand and supply. And unfortunately, there's demand and supply. Once there's demand at the cocoa farming communities for this service, for these services of children, somebody will be willing to fill in that gap of the demand. So we need to identify all these actors. What are their motivations? How do we stop them from doing the practice? And so the Cocoa Board must go beyond, engage broadly with other stakeholders, and take the views of people, understand the dynamics of the communities. There's no simple way of addressing this problem. Each community is unique, and the forms of child labor and child trafficking vary across countries. And then also there are places where the mainstay of the...
We appear to have a bit of a connection break there. Can you hear me, Ahmed? I think you...
Yes.
Yes, good. Go ahead with your point.
Yes, so I'm saying that there are communities where they are agrarian, and there's just one season. So beyond that one agricultural season, there's a hunger gap. And within that hunger gap, anything that they would do to feed the family. And unfortunately, most of these families have large families. So they may feel that, well, if I want to release a child to work temporarily, because that's the understanding they usually have, that the child is going to work for a short period to support household income. And here, the person is vulnerable, the food security, the family is food insecure, the person is not able to provide for their daily needs and other social needs that they will have. So therefore, they see the child as an immediate tool for increasing their income and coping with the hunger gap. So if we're approaching this problem, we need to understand these dynamics and respond to some of these things, so that vulnerable families, for instance, can have access as a stopgap measure so that the push factor that motivates them to be able to engage in these practices is addressed. So it's complex. And the Cocoa Board must take it up. The Ministry of Gender and Social Protection must come inside. The media, like you are doing, is wonderful. And all other stakeholders, we need to all put our acts together to be able to nip this canker in the bud.
Well, complex it is indeed. And, I've just been thinking, though, coming to you, Kwesi, if JoyNews had not come out with this Hotline documentary, it's reminiscent of what we saw, what we found on the Volta Lake some time back, reminiscent of other things we've seen in respect of child labor activities, which the law frowns upon, but they are still happening, and sometimes it begs belief. Now, if we hadn't done this, who would have been focusing on this all-important matter? When you look at the data, and I'll have us take a look at some of them. It will be on your screens as well. But I just wanted to run this by you before I pose a question to you. Children between 5 and 14 years engaged in the economic activity, 5 and 14 years. We have a total number of 229,628. That's no mean number. When you look at the gender mix, boys versus girls, usually what you would see, and this is what we have, 130,478 for the boys and 99,154 the girls, just a little shy of 100,000. And this is data from the Ghana Statistical Service. When you look at, Kwesi, when you look at the numbers of children in our country per the recent census, and you look at how many we have involved in child labor, how much of a concern is it for you? And Friends of the Nation, how much have you done in particular respect of this situation? Kwesi, if you can hear me, can you unmute? Is Kwesi with us? Okay, so I cannot hear from Kwesi. If you can hear me, please unmute. If not, I'll come back to you. But Bright, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, it's good you can. Now, how do you react to these numbers? I mean, are they shocking? Are they extraordinary? Or are we just... maybe we don't know the actual numbers, which is a very high possibility. We don't know the actual numbers. How do you appreciate these numbers?
Well, the measurement of children engaged in economic activities do not necessarily mean that they are gaining from those activities. And it doesn't give a clear picture of what the situation is in terms of whether or not they are involved in child labor, by just a description to describe the number of children that are involved in economic activities. And I think that even if you expand it from 5 to 17, you get a huge number in terms of our children who are engaged in economic activities. And in measuring that, it is on the basis of the economic activity that you are able to measure whether or not the child is involved in child labor, and whether the activity that the child is involved in is hazardous or is a worse form of child labor. So they have given us a clear picture. But if you look at the age range that they use in calculating that, in our legislations, a child who falls between 5 and 14 are limited in terms of the work that they have to do. So from 13 up to 14, it means that a child can be engaged in light work. So that figure can also describe a situation where a child will be involved in economic activities, but do not necessarily amount to child labor activities. But it should give the state a sense that if you have a majority of your children or a percentage of your children at that age, where by law we expect them to be in school, we expect them to be under training, we expect them to learn, and they are involved in economic activities, that is taking away a time from what they need to invest in terms of all these indicators, then they stand to reason that we need to give a different approach in terms of how we want to handle issues that relates to our children. So if light work, so the question now is that, is there certain activities that amount to economic activity within the light work? And whether if it is economic activity, is somebody benefiting from that economic activity? then we'll be able to have a clear understanding of what the situation is. But the picture is so clear that if you have a certain number of children engaged in economic activity, then it means that the time that they are using to engage in those activities, taking something from the classroom, is taking something from their learning periods and all that. So it is for us as a state to be able to come back to look at how best we can also shape some of these things so that we can reduce the number of children who are involved in economic activities.
It's interesting you brought this up because according to the Ghana Children's Act of 1998, the minimum age for children, for the admission of children who into employment is 15. However,
15.
like you mentioned, they may be employed at the age of 13 for light work. And the minimum age for engagement of persons in hazardous work is 18, at which point they know exactly what they are getting into. So obviously, if we have some of these ones below 18 who are engaging in mining activities and all of that, all of these factor into the breaches of the law when it comes to children in labor, because they shouldn't be doing such dangerous work.
They should not even be there at all. That is why it is important that we look at also the dynamic that exists and the kind of system that we can provide. So, for instance, when you go to the rural communities, you will see that sometimes even parents find it difficult to leave their children behind when they are going to the farm. And if they go with their children, even the presence of the child alone, where certain activities take place, become hazardous to the child, even though the child is not involved in the activity itself. So there's a whole lot of a social protection system that we need to establish so that when we are rolling it out, we would do it in such a way that it's very systematic and it follows a certain social protection safety net so that all these things can come to bear. So that is why I am so particular about the issue of the sustainability program that are going on, because buying companies have invested a huge sums of money when it comes to cleaning the cocoa sector so that the quality of our cocoa will be appreciated globally. So these are things that we expect that they would also highlight. Because, for instance, in 2015, the enrollment rate of children in the cocoa growing community was about 89%. But as we speak now, it's around 97%, which is very encouraging. And you see one of the things that for me should bring us to we having the understanding of what is happening is that the income levels of cocoa farmers, it is an average of 1,200 Ghana cedis every month, which also suggests that if we put in certain mechanisms and we address issues of attitudes, the farmers will have capacity to deal with their own farms without necessarily engaging children. And this will require a certain robust system where all these farmers will recognize that the state is so much interested in the welfare of children, therefore, they are communicating it to us, or they are, as my brother said, certain league table for them, so that when you engage your child in this kind of act, this will be the punishment that goes with it, but not necessarily in terms of enforcing a pure criminal concept within a social protection issues and all that. And even if you want to enforce a criminal concept in it, you also need to attach the remediation aspect in terms of how you put the family in a system where they will not go back to do some of these things again. So I feel that the situation is there, steps are being taken, but let's lay more emphasis on the sustainability program that are going on within the cocoa sector.
So let's talk about that sustainability. I'm coming to you now, Ahmed. And Bright has spoken about social protection. And it is clear when you look at the documentary, Children in Cocoa Labor, you would realize that it's a bread and butter issue. It's a poverty issue. Else, why would families be willing to give out children just to earn something little? As you've gone round with your rural initiatives, you have indeed come across some of these. What else do you feel we should be looking at in terms of protecting these communities? What can we do? We have our empowerment programs. It appears they are not working against this. We have LEAP. It doesn't seem to be faring well against this. So what exactly, when it comes to self-empowerment, do you feel should be done by the overarching body, which is government, to ensure that we can at least halve or maybe do better when it comes to the numbers we are seeing?
Yes, so first of all, the referral mechanisms for adjudicating cases or providing redress for child protection are weak, few, and far between. So we need to look at strengthening and increasing the availability and accessibility to redress mechanisms and institutions. I'm talking about the fact that when you look at those domestic victims and violence support units, they are located in only 4 out of the 15 districts we have in the Upper East region. We have fewer of the offices where issues of domestic violence, which sometimes child protection issues are there. So they are not able to respond. We talk about legal aid, where parents and other people who want to pursue cases of children engaged in trafficking may want to pursue. They are not accessible to the people. We need to look at strengthening these institutions and making them visible at the community level. At the district assembly level, we have a Justice and Security Committee, and then also the District Assembly has a mandate to set up and make sure that child panels are very functional. And with these child panels, they meet regularly, ideally, to look at the situation of children, the challenges that they have for the specific districts. Unfortunately, not much attention. The political will to support these child panels has not been there. The necessary funding has not been there. So I think that civil society needs to mobilize around some of the local governance act and systems like the child panels so that we can support the various district assemblies to empanel these child panels and make sure that they allocate money from the medium-term development plans and annual budgets and annual action plans for specific activities aimed at reducing child labor. That's the only way we can address context-specific issues, because then if the district assembly is the one leading the process, then they are speaking specifically to the context that affects them directly. And then also we need to look at a strong private sector action there so that, the laws are there, but to some extent they don't bite. And once the law don't bite, if there's a higher motivation, that's why I mentioned about the ethical standards league table for actors. And then also a strong measure, like that police officer who was involved in that. How do we ensure that we strategically litigate, petition the necessary authorities within the police hierarchy to ensure that people like that are removed from the system? So that, and also awareness about child protection. In fact, our laws as it is, children of a certain age are not supposed to travel unaccompanied. So we have an association in Upper East, a network of civil society against child trafficking and human trafficking in the Upper East region. We have had on countless occasions impounded buses with the collaboration of the GPRTU and the Ghana Police Service in the Upper East region. Bus loads of children being loaded, a full bus of 45 children being loaded with just 2 adults, and they're going to the southern part of Ghana to work. And these are initiatives that we take. We cannot be everywhere. There is a mandated state institution, that is the police, that's the Department of Social Welfare, that is our court. We need to have these people functioning and visible across all areas, so that when cases are also reported and children are in conflict with the law or in contact with the law, then it's adjudicated in a speedy manner. Once cases delay, people may resort to other means. So we need to strengthen and expedite action in terms of handling and providing redress to victims. In fact, there are parents whose children are stolen. They don't voluntarily release the children. The children are stolen and trafficked. Right. So some of those parents want to seek redress, but the system doesn't seem to allow them because it's cumbersome, it takes long, it's expensive, and so the person may just want to give up. And then also, some of our traditional authorities and state institutions meddle in these affairs. We all know that we are a community, and so we know each other, we want to protect each other. But unfortunately, when it comes to children, that communal spirit seems to be missing. And then we are protecting the perpetrator and leaving the victim. We need to look at that system also.
Ahmed, very, very quickly on this one, very brief take on it. So do you feel that a lot of the time in addressing this huge problem, we like employing knee-jerk reactions, and COCOBOD has stepped in. In fact, when this documentary was put out there, I followed some of the discourse on social media, and I realized that there was a bit of a thread. Some people were saying, This is not new. It's been going on. It's not that our authorities don't know them. It's not that the cocoa producing community doesn't know it. But we all keep quiet about it. How much of a knee-jerk reaction is it, this reaction from Cocoa Board? And what more do you feel they should be doing specifically on this issue? Because now it is them, they are the ones in the spotlight.
Yeah, so I was just thinking aloud, and you asked this question. I don't know whether the Cocoa Board, as a child protection officer or an officer for ensuring some of the ethical standards and compliance. I think that going forward, I know they have a lot of field officers who collect and study the market intelligence around cocoa. It should not be limited to the market intelligence. I think going forward, the officers should be able to collect some intelligence around the trend of child trafficking and the engagement of children in this beautiful economy of ours in terms of the cocoa sector, so that they can appropriately inform the authorities at the Cocoa Board. And I say yes, perfectly, it's the knee-jerk reaction. We don't want it to be like a 9-day wonder where we come and talk about it again and it goes off again. And like people said on social media, this is rife, it's common. And I dare say that the numbers that we are seeing are actually a tip of the iceberg. Ghana, unfortunately, we tend not to get our data right most of the times. And so the numbers that we are seeing and generally encompasses other forms of work like Bright indicated. And beyond that, we need to pay attention to the fact that there are other aspects of child labor and other numbers that are hidden that has not been brought to the limelight. And so you realize that based on this documentary alone, this hotline by JoyNews, that a multi-stakeholder approach is required beyond the state infrastructure architecture. We need private sector, we need the media, so that we can put this on the agenda of the relevant ministries and agencies. And we need to hold them accountable in terms of exercising their mandate around child protection. What is the Ministry of Gender doing? They should give us a clear plan in terms of addressing this. But I must admit that there has been some initiatives to work around, especially children engaged in hard labor and other forms of work within the cocoa sector and other sectors. But we need an expanded and a more holistic social protection plan and a child protection agenda that encompasses and addresses the root cause of the drivers of these actions. Without that, we will only be responding to situations as and when they happen. And I implore them to go on the ground and break the cell. They should use a value chain approach. Who are the actors? Where are they located? What are their motivations? For instance, as we speak today, there is a conflict in Boko, and a lot of the Lungu area is affected. People from that area are not able to move about freely into and out of. I've had complaints of farmers whose vegetables are rotten because they're not able to access the market center. So these people have children. And once they are vulnerable, somebody can exploit the vulnerability of these people, be able to traffic their children, as well as engage their children in other hazardous form of work. And in fact, there are instances where children have been involved in some, not just hazardous work, but aspect of violence, extremism, and violent conflict. Right. So we need a holistic approach.
Right. Let's go back to the question of, social protection, child protection. It's not that we're doing nothing. I know UNICEF, for example, has been collaborating with the Ministry for Gender, Children and Social Protection. But the question is whether we are doing enough. When you look at SDG 8.7 to be specific, it talks about taking immediate and effective measures to eradicate forced labor, end modern slavery and human trafficking, and secure the prohibition and elimination of the worst forms of child labor, including recruitment and use of child soldiers, and by 2025, end child labor in all forms. Now, in asking whether we are doing enough from the standpoint of government, the ministry, those in charge, the United States that we see to be some beacon of improvement when it comes to these things, rights, just a century ago, they were in similar straits, and on the back of poverty, on the back of lax child protection measures. So what more should we be doing? We have an agenda that by 2025, we should be attaining certain gains. Are we on course? And what more would you like to see from establishment? Is Bright with us?
Okay. All right. Based on the data that we have so far, it clearly shows that we're working towards achieving the agenda, but as to whether we'll be able to fully achieve it is another matter altogether. Because we are seeing the reductions in terms of children participating in the cocoa sector in the rural communities. We have seen an increase in terms of school enrollment. We have also seen some gradual increase in terms of the income levels of farmers, and then also facilities that are available for cocoa farmers in the cocoa sector. And then also what the buying companies are doing. I know one particular buying company has built about 13, constructed 13 schools in the rural communities and all that. So these are some basic measurements that we can use to see whether we'll be able to do that. And based on the global standard, you know, at a point, a child took Cote d'Ivoire to court, to the U.S. Supreme Court, where there was a ruling. So it compels, there's some kind of compliance that has been developed by the law to ensure that anybody who buys cocoa from Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana must comply with certain indicators to be able to say that the cocoa is child labor free. And on the basis of that, which I find it a bit difficult that our social protection safety net is not even talking about it, that in 2018, 2016, 2017, 18, thereabout, government of Ghana developed what we call the Ghana Child Labor Monitoring System, which is more comprehensive in terms of recognizing all the structures that deals with issues of social protection and how best we can also achieve results collectively. And this system has been there for a while now, and it's yielding a certain result because most of the buying companies that are using that system are getting results, and then there are data to show the kind of achievement that they are doing. So that is what we expect that government would also do in terms of the thing that they have to do, especially when it comes to Cocoa Board. We expect that Cocoa Board must ensure that there is a compliance, because at the end of the day, they have to buy the things. And when it comes to the hardware aspect, we expect that our social protection system will deal with it. The Department of Children, Social Welfare, and then also the labor unit would also deal with those aspects. So we, at the government level, one of the basic things that for me is a problem has to do with how they will streamline the functions of the various social protection institutions in this country. Because you see Cocoa Board at a point directly involved in addressing child labor issues that for me, I feel that they don't have capacity to do that because we have a labor unit that can provide those roles. You also see the social welfare not also linking issues of the LIB to some of these vulnerable groups and all that. So there must be a straight realignment of roles and responsibilities so that people will know where their work ends, and then the professional would also come in to address specific issues and all that. The trafficking unit of the Ministry of Gender and Social Protection, what can we do? What is their role when it comes to trafficking? Social welfare, what is their role when it comes to the state of children in the cocoa farms? The labor unit, how do they provide regulation to ensure that individuals that are using children, or companies or institutions that are using children to work, what are the standards that they are setting for them? So that if all these institutions work, then you come to the level where we would establish the value chain system, where everybody is working to ensure that at every step, we are doing things that would also be in the best interest of children. So there is a break in our social protection system. For that matter, it has made the safety net so weak that anybody at all can participate in that process. So especially when it comes to the state institutions, it's a very serious issue because you expect that trafficking issues are purely criminal. So when you are implementing or enforcing traffic rules, you cannot do away with the police. But here is the case, you are seeing a police officer involved in an act, the very act that is supposed to protect children for. So you see that there is a break when it comes to the protecting children. You would also see that there are issues where children are trafficked and then we cannot even get accommodation for them. This comes back to the social welfare, how they are having facilities to be able to deal with some of these issues so that they can carry out the social inquiry report on the families and be able to come out with the solutions that are tailor-made to address the the specific issues and all that. So until we have a system that addresses some of these things, then we'll just be doing the knee-jerk approach where we hear it, we go and cause arrest. And I can tell you, if the system do not handle the 8 people that have been arrested, they will not be able to get enough evidence to prosecute them. And for that, I can tell, because I participated in this space, and I know how the trafficking issues go about, and the hardcore evidence that the state needs to be able to prosecute some of these people and all that. So let's be clear in terms of what we want as a state. But I will lay emphasis on the fact that government must pay attention to the Ghana Child Labor Monitoring System, and then also the Child Labor Free Zones document that they have developed, vis-a-vis using the child policy that we have developed in this country in order to address this particular issue.
Okay, so before I take your concluding comments, maybe in 30 seconds each, I'd just like us to take a look at this rural-urban breakdown of the figures, and it makes for interesting reading. When you look at the statistics, in the urban areas, when it comes to those involved in plant and machine operation and assembly, you look at about 1%, elementary occupations, about 12% of children involved, and that is those between the ages of 5 and 14, the segregation. Then you look at those involved in craft and trade, that's about 23%. You get to service and sales workers, 25%, and agriculture, forestry, and fisheries, that's 39%. But you see the major difference when you look at the rural communities, because those in skilled agricultural, forestry, and fishery work is 85%. Of course, you would imagine that a lot of them are involved in farming themselves. Then you would come to other bits when it comes to the plant operation, that is just about 0.4%, so a decrease from those in the urban areas. For the service and sales workers, 4.1%, 3.5% for the craft and related trade workers, and that is the total number. So it is clear that if we put in place certain measures, we're going to be able to get rid of this situation, addressing the core challenges in the urban and rural areas. To both of you, 30 seconds to give your final comments, and then we'll draw the curtains on this conversation. I'll start with you, Ahmed.
Yes, so thank you very much. I think that we need to look at professing the appropriate charges for culprits. If you look at the Saboba boat incidents where children capsized, the charge was manslaughter. Okay, so we need to look at the appropriate charges for perpetrators. And then we need to move fast in terms of adjudication so that the necessary cases can be put to rest. And then also the way we handle children who are victims, as well as children who are in conflict with the law. We need to look at that and improve it. So we need all actors acting on board and supporting each other so that we can create a stronger ecosystem for child protection in Ghana. Thank you.
Bright?
Yes, let me appreciate the work that you've done, and then also put to our listeners that all of us must be involved in this kind of activity to be able to rescue our children. And very soon, let me use this time to also say that very soon we'll be launching the Ghana Child Labor Monitoring and Remediation Report, which would highlight some of the things that are happening. And then as a state, we need to also have interest in how we want to protect our children. Once we are able to do that, we can get rid of some of these miscreants who are taking advantage of our children.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Ahmed Awal Kariama, Executive Director, Rural Initiatives for Self-Empowerment, that is RISE Ghana, and of course, Bright Apia, Executive Director, Child Rights International. We still stay with the big stories, and up next we are bringing another big one when it comes to the UTAG situation. That is up next as we talk about the NLC's latest intervention. How is that going to pan out tomorrow when that meeting, slated for 2:30, takes place? Stay with us as we bring you the details.